Hey everybody, so it's been a long time since I've done a video. Been kind of crazy busy, been out of the country a lot. And I adopted a puppy, as you can see, who is quite honestly driving me fucking bonkers. But she's cute. But if you don't pay attention to her, every 10 seconds she starts whining. So you might hear some whining in the background. That's just her sitting there staring at me and whining for no reason whatsoever. See? So today, I was going to do a talk on the idea behind intelligence manifesting as morality. But I didn't feel like doing that today, so I changed it. So we're going to talk about the big thing that everybody seems to love to talk about. Do you know what that is? Zombies. Zombies. Okay, really. We used to discuss this all the time. I'm sure everybody in that has seen a zombie film has probably discussed this at some point or another. Like, it is the discussion that people talk about. You also have these discussions about like vampires, werewolves, blah, blah, blah. Anything supernatural, somebody has talked about it, somebody's discussed it, and like how it might be plausible or what might actually happen. Zombies is like the biggest one. People have a million different ideas of how zombies would be, how they would become, what they would do, everything. You even have people who are preppers that have like mapped out exactly what they would do in an apocalypse of zombies should it actually occur. You even have scientists now who are making claims that certain fungi and such can possibly be the reason for a zombie outbreak someday. Not really buying it, because if you actually understand how the fungi work or the parasites work on smaller critters like insects, they aren't turning them into ravenous hordes of cannibalistic nut jobs that don't die. They basically just exert enough control over them to take over their mind to a degree and force them to go somewhere that they want them to go. Like the parasite will generally force them to go into an area that is perfect for a fungi to survive, and then it'll kill it. And then the fungi will sprout, or the parasite will sprout, or lay eggs in the perfect spot, and then the eggs will hatch, and they will use the insect as nutrition, food, as they grow, and then they get swept off by spores, and then they spread to more insects. Not exactly what you'd call like the zombie thing of what would happen in an apocalypse. When we think zombie apocalypse, we think people turning into batshit fucking crazy cannibalistic monsters of death and decay that don't care about anything other than they just want to eat anything. Now you could also have the variations of, is this zombie just going for my brain? Or does it want to eat like all of me? Does it want flesh? Or does it want like cerebral cortex? Does it want the gray matter? It's one of the variables. I'm going to try and get through this quick because, I mean, like, I'm sorry, but I have like hours worth of podcast shit that I could do on this if I wanted to. I put a lot of thought into this dumbass subject. Don't ask me why. It's just whatever the fuck. My brain, it likes to think about this. I don't know why. But we used to argue this in the Marine Corps, which is funny. You think of Marines, you think of like these hard asses. No, Marines are pretty fucking goofy. And we used to argue all the time about the apocalypse, whether it was like, you know, nuclear or zombie, viral, bacterial, chemical, whatever. But the zombie one we actually all kind of came to a consensus on this one. And it's funny because I saw a post the other day of somebody saying, why do we even care about a zombie apocalypse? Because the military has everything they need to take care of it. Wrong. The military has shit, okay? If you've been in the military, especially if you've been a grunt in the Marine Corps, you know that military grade is not a compliment. If you hear somebody say, oh, this is military grade, I probably wouldn't buy it, because that means it was made by like the lowest bidder and it is probably garbage. Okay, so that's number one. You don't get good shit in the military unless you've got, some connections. The Army kind of gets good shit because they have the most funding, and, special forces, whatever. But that's a long-ass tangent right there. Big thing is the military would be no help whatsoever. Because as we figured, the most likely route that a zombie apocalypse would start would be because it was viral. And we came to the consensus that the virus would most likely be something that had mutated a lot over time. Hence, we say it's probably going to be an STD. And that's gross as shit, I know. But that's probably the smartest thing that a virus could do if it wanted to transmit and turn the entire population into zombies, would be through sex. Duh. We all love sex. We'd all catch it. Especially the military. See, because the military, they love going to things like strip clubs and sleeping around with each other and, girls that come on base, all that kind of stuff. Or guys that come on base. It happens a lot. So, imagine, if you will, somebody catches it. Somehow, it manifests somewhere. And then they sleep around. And then those people sleep around. And then those people sleep around. And then all those people go to strip clubs and meet people and sleep around. So, is the military going to help you? Probably not, because they're going to be the first ones to be infected. And the ones that are left are going to have all the shitty garbage gear that you think is awesome that would take care of an apocalypse, but trust me, it's not going to do jack shit. You probably have better weapons in your house than the military has. And the military doesn't exactly focus on large destruction anymore like people think. Everything is surgical now. It's not like Vietnam where you had napalm and Agent Orange and cluster bombs and all that stuff to just completely wipe out entire countrysides. Now we have missiles that you can shoot halfway across the world and land right on top of somebody's car and kill just the one guy with no collateral damage. So it's not going to be very useful in an apocalypse when you have tens of millions or hundreds of millions of zombies. It's not going to work. But the other problem is, if this is an STD or a virus that can be transmitted through the air, like most viruses can be, because they are generally like in droplet form, which means that they can be passed through air or through cuts, any opening, so your mouth, your eyes, your nose, your sinuses. So, the military, again, they live and breathe in very close quarters with each other. So not only is the military probably going to be the first one to catch it, even if there's only one guy that catches it, he's going to spread it to everybody that he comes in contact with. And that's going to be, if he's in contact with his company or his platoon, that's tens to hundreds of people that he could come in contact with and infect just by being around them. You go on a march, you go on a run, and you're right next to everybody, and you're just infecting everybody. You go to a weekend barracks party where there's hundreds of people there, you're infecting everybody. So the military is not going to be much help because they're the first to go. So, and then what do you think is next? The next people to go are going to be the people that are investigating what the hell just happened to the military. That's going to include a lot of scientists, a lot of investigators, probably a lot of people from multiple government agencies, all trying to figure out what the hell just happened to the military. Why did they all just go quiet? Why did they all start reporting weird shit like people eating each other? Then you're going to have first responders that are going to be the next to go. EMTs, paramedics, firefighters, police, everyone that is going to go get sent to try and investigate what the hell is going on. The people that manage to get out of there or transport people to a hospital. Guess who's next? Doctors and nurses and inpatients. And anybody working in a laboratory setting in the hospital. Pretty much the entire hospital, every hospital that deals with this is gone. So not only have you just lost your military, which may have been able to contain this, you've also lost pretty much all of your critical people to the beginning of this spread of the virus. And it'll probably all happen before anyone is even aware of what the hell is going on, depending on how fast it moves. If this is like COVID, where we saw that it could take up to 2 weeks to show symptoms, or some people could have COVID with no symptoms, how many people do you think would get infected before it would actually start showing up? If you start thinking about the fact that the military is the first people to catch this, the military gets around a lot. They travel a lot, whether it's to go home on leave, to go on vacation, to go on a deployment, to go do an investigation in a country, to go help out another country in after a natural disaster. Military is going to be spreading this stuff like crazy. If it's not like quick, if this stuff infects you within like 12 hours, yeah, you're probably not going to infect a whole lot of people, because you'll probably be turning before you even bumped into more than just your daily people. So it's not going to be that big of a deal. But if it's something like COVID, where it takes like 14 days to manifest finally, think of how many people you interact with in 14 days, especially if you were traveling. We saw what happened with COVID. As soon as it hit the airports, it was worldwide within days. So this would be the same thing. Not only have you lost your critical military personnel, you have lost all your doctors, nurses, EMTs, paramedics, cops, firefighters, probably a lot of government agencies. And they're probably all infected before anyone even knows that it exists. And then it's all just gonna hit at once. Within like a couple days, once it starts manifesting, and everyone is just going off. Before you know it, you probably got tens of millions of people infected. If we're talking just the US alone, we have 350 million people here. At any given time, we have roughly around 1 to 2 million people in the military. If you had the entire military get infected, or at least the vast majority of it, and then they spread it to other critical personnel, you're looking at millions of infected within the very beginning of the outbreak, which is bad enough, but those millions are going to be critical infrastructure to dealing with this infestation. This virus would be brilliant if it manifested itself as an STD, as we agreed, because that is the way to get rid of most of your threats to extermination of the virus all at the beginning. Be pretty fucking smart. And who knows? We don't know a lot about viruses, so we don't know. I mean, they are simple. They're not even technically alive. They don't have a power center. But for some reason, viruses seem to be pretty smart to a degree when it comes to infection. They seem to be very good at mutating just as people are building up immunities, or they manage to be immune from the beginning. And people can't build an immunity to it, and so people get fucked. And we see this in a lot of viruses. That's why we can't cure a lot of stuff, because we just don't understand. So if we can't even cure a common cold or the common flu, do you really think there's going to be a cure for the zombie virus? Hell no. You could be living in the zombie world for 100 years and you probably wouldn't see a cure pop up. The flu and the common cold has been around for how long? And we can't even find a cure for it yet? And anyone who found the cure for it would be an instant, trillionaire overnight, because everybody would want it, because everybody gets a cold. Anyways, we turn this into numbers. We are just talking about America right now, okay? Let's just stick with America. If we try to talk about all 8 billion people in different countries, infection rates are going to vary on everybody. We're just going to talk about America. So, say, like I said, you get about roughly 2 million infected right at the start. And it cripples your infrastructure because it is all the major people that could fight this virus from the start. And so you basically have all the civilians left to fend for themselves with people who are trained. Maybe they could do it. They could deal with something like veterans or military veterans, police veterans, firefighter veterans, EMT, people who have been trained in medicine, but they weren't working in the field. Like I myself, I have an EMT advanced, but I'm not an EMT. It's just good skill set to have to know how to do that kind of stuff if you get stuck in a bad situation. I would recommend everyone in the world should get their CPR certifications, and they should get their EMT basics, at least. You can get an EMT basic pretty cheap nowadays. It's not a long course. It's a couple weeks long. Anyway, we're not going on down that road, okay? Zombies. So, let's say we got 2 million zombies. Have you ever seen a stadium full of people? Let's say an average stadium, like a big stadium, is 100,000 people. And you see that on TV, and you see the shit tons of people on TV, and you're like, holy fuck, that's a lot of people. Okay, so say that's 100,000 right there. If immediately you have, say, 2 to 3 million people infected, that's 20 to 30 stadiums full worth of people that are now infected that are turning into zombies right off the bat. Do you think anyone's going to be able to stop that? If you have a horde of 100,000 zombies walk into a city, do you think anyone's going to be able to stop that? No. Unless you nuke the city and wipe out everyone with it. But then even then, that's detrimental. Because if it doesn't work and you still got more, you just killed off a lot of survivors, and you basically just made an area unlivable, and you completely contaminated any supplies whatsoever that may have been in there that would have been crucial to survival in the future. Not to mention, the military, like I said, is probably the first to go, which means you're probably not going to have a whole lot of people with nuclear launch codes, so don't expect that. I wouldn't even expect helicopters, planes, airstrikes, anything like that. You'd be lucky to get grunts on the ground with a rifle. Even then, they're probably already turned and they're walking around eating people. So say I mean, look at what happened with COVID. People refused to believe that it was really that big of a deal. How long did it take of it spreading before people finally realized, like, holy shit, this is a real thing? In America alone, you probably had hundreds of thousands of people to millions of people exposed before people finally started realizing, oh, maybe this isn't a hoax. Maybe this is real. I mean, whether you argue whether it was really as bad as people made it out to be, that's really up to the individual. I got COVID early on. I was probably one of the first people in my state to catch it, and it wasn't really that bad. And this is coming from somebody who's a cancer survivor, so my immune system sucks. And I weaned it in like 2 weeks. It just made me cough a lot. It sucked, but it was nowhere near lethal. But anyways, that has nothing to do with it. That's just an example of why this virus would spread so far before it even started to get contained, because people wouldn't even believe it. Imagine if you turned on the TV and somebody said, oh yeah, there's a fucking zombie virus out there. It's a zombie apocalypse. People are eating each other. You would think it was like some satire show. You would think it was like Saturday Night Live, like making fun of it, doing a skit or something. You wouldn't believe it. Like, how the hell could you believe that? This would be the weirdest, wackiest, fucked up shit that you'd ever heard. So by the time people even realized that this stuff is spreading, it's probably already spread throughout America, like vast amounts. Let's say 1/3 of Americans get infected before we even finally agree that yes, there is a zombie virus out there and it is spreading. Okay, you have 350 million. Let's just say there's 400 million people in America, and half of them get infected. That is 200 million people. Okay, if you have 100,000 people fit into a stadium, and now you have 200 million people that are infected. That is 2,000 stadiums full of 100,000 zombies each, now wandering around the country, destroying everything in their path. With that many, do you think anything is going to be safe? People say, oh, you could go to a military base, you go to a safe haven, any of that shit. Do you think anything would be able to stop even one stadium worth of zombies? Even if they were stupid, moronic, slow-moving zombies that had no agility whatsoever. They just shambled around and tried to grab people to eat them. You could walk around them if you wanted to. But when you've got 100,000 of them bearing down on your little safe haven, do you think you're going to be able to stop them? No. And that's just the beginning. With every safe haven that goes down, every military complex that goes down, that just adds more and more to the horde. So, by the time you even realize what the hell's going on, people are getting fucked up left and right, you've probably lost 99% of your population already. That means you have, 390 million zombies out there? So 3,900 stadiums full of zombies walking around? Yeah. Even if the military was at full functionality, they're not stopping that shit. No military is equipped to deal with 390 million enemies at a time. And that's just here in America. Can you imagine China, who has over 1 billion people in their country, and how close they live with each other? China would be an absolute shit show. Even worse so than the US. Canada might be okay. depending on the variables. But the fact that Canada's a little bit more spread out. You might have some clusterfucks in, the bigger cities like Toronto and Calgary and such, but there's a lot of small cities around Canada that I think would be semi-safe, especially if these particular zombies in the apocalypse can't handle the cold. Canada's probably a good place to go. I'd probably go a little bit further though, and I'd probably go up to the Yukon and just learn to be an Eskimo, because that's probably going to be your safest place. Anyways, sorry, I keep looking up. I'm looking at my numbers here that I went through so that I could identify, to actually give you an idea of how many people could be infected and how many people would be infected, and try to give you some sort of scale to that so that it makes it a little bit more understandable. Because when you say 200 million people, you understand what 200 million people is, but try to imagine 200 million people. Our brains just have a hard time comprehending that. We don't comprehend vast numbers like that very well. We understand them. We understand what it means and what it is, but we can't picture that actually happening. So that's why I've been sitting here looking up, because I have all these numbers that I had put out. But I just gave kind of the basics of the initial outbreak. You also got to think that most of the military, if they had any sort of weapon or ordnance that could deal with this kind of stuff, it's probably buried in a bunker somewhere in the middle of fucking nowhere that nobody knows about except for a handful of people. And guess what? If this is a long incubation period type of thing, there's probably people in that bunker that have been infected because they probably went to work that day and then went home and went to the grocery store or the gym or did something and bumped into someone who transmitted the virus. And then they go to work again a couple weeks later. They keep going to work every day. And a couple weeks later, all of a sudden, all these people start turning into zombies in the bunker. I believe every hospital, every police station, every military outpost, any safe haven, bunkers, whatever, will also be the first ones to go, because people are going to get infected and then they're going to trap themselves in these very close-knit quarters and they're going to spread it to everybody, and then nobody's going to be able to get out. Imagine if you were in this bunker and people started turning into zombies around you. Good luck getting it out. And then if somebody did get out, you're just going to go transmit the virus to somebody else. And if somebody wants to get in to that bunker to try and use some sort of theoretical weapon that might exist, that's a death trap. It's a bunker full of zombies. Close quarters, probably hundreds of zombies in close quarters in a bunker that you have to get through to even maybe find something that would work against them. It's not going to happen. So another reason why the military ain't doing jack shit to help when this stuff happens. So I'm drilling this into your head. Don't expect military or police or emergency services of any kind, including doctors, nurses, hospitals, anything like that, to do anything to help curb this, because they are going to be the first to go and they're going to be gone. The best thing for you would be if you were on vacation in the middle of nowhere in a cabin for a month doing yoga and meditation or some shit, and you were out there and there was nobody around. But then you'd probably get fucked, because then you'd go back to town not realizing that there's a zombie apocalypse happening, and you'd probably drive right in the middle of one and you'd be fucked. So whatever. But now we've just discussed how simple it would be to actually wipe out humanity in the US alone just by sheer numbers and transmission rates of zombies. And this is just assuming these are dumbass zombies like you saw in the original Night of the Living Dead, where it's like they move slow as hell. Like they sit there and shamble along at like a quarter of a mile per hour to where you could just walk around them if you needed to because they move so goddamn slow. But we got to think about all the variables, tons of variables that could happen with any of this stuff. The first one being, what is the rate of infection? Is it fast? Or is it more kind of like insidious and going to take longer? If it's really fast, you might be able to catch it. As weird as that sounds, but if it's fast, you might be able to cut it off before it spreads too much because it's popping up really quickly. And so you can contain it, you can quarantine. But if it's slow, something like COVID that takes weeks, it's going to be throughout the entire population before you even realize it's going to start hitting people and turning people into zombies. You're fucked. How long do they stay alive? Are these like zombies that are going to just be living indefinitely so long as the virus is active inside them? Will it just keep them alive? Or do they actually need something to stay alive? Or will they just slowly decay and crumble over time and eventually just pass on and be dead finally? Do they need to eat or do they just crave it? Like, do they need to actually eat people or animals, anything like that, in order to continue living, to keep the virus like multiplying and producing so that it can continue to inhabit its host and control it? Or do they just crave eating people or animals, but they don't need it? They could go hundreds of years without eating a single thing and still be alive so long as the virus is inside them, replicating and mutating and dealing with all this shit. How smart are they? Do you have the dumbass Night of the Living Dead zombies that are just walking around and like can't do jack shit other than just like pummel on a door? Or are these those freaky ass zombies from like World War Z? Or 28 Days Later, where they fucking sprint and they can climb and they can communicate. That's just going to make it done. If you have the transmission rates of COVID, like the subtlety of COVID, and then these people basically turn into zombies that are going to be faster than people because they don't need cardio. They don't need to worry about, oxygen and being fit in order to run. They'll just run. And they know how to climb. If the virus gives them any enhanced capabilities, like they're stronger than the average human. So even if you tried to take one down, you'd probably get your ass kicked by one, let alone, 100,000 of them. Can they actually die? I mean, you hear this whole thing of like, shoot them in the head or decapitate them will stop them. But is that true? I mean, obviously the brain does send out the signals for at least normal people. But how does the virus work? Does the virus send out signals through the brain? Or does the virus send out signals from anywhere in the body to where even if you chop their head off or shot them in the head, they're still going because the virus is still replicating and still controlling the body? You might be fucked. I mean, granted, if you chop off their head, they're probably not going to be biting you or eating you, so, that would help, I would assume. But there's still going to be a problem if they're still chomping. They'll be rolling around, headless. And the head will be rolling around trying to chomp on your ankles or something, little ankle biters. plus other enhancements. I mean, do they evolve? Over time, are they going to evolve into something worse? I mean, we know that viruses mutate. We know that as soon as they start to become weakened or too many hosts start to build immunity, they mutate and they become a little bit stronger and a little bit better. And if you find a way to actually kill the virus, you have to take into account of evolution and Darwin's theory of survival of the fittest and natural variation. Natural variation says that not everything is the same. You have average, you have below average, and you have above average. And if you find a way to kill off the virus, it's going to kill average, below average, and above average, but it's not going to kill off that 1% top tier. The strongest of the virus will survive. And then that one will replicate, and that one will make it stronger. This is how we came across MRSA. We kept hospitals so clean all the time that we killed off all the bacteria and all the viruses, all the organisms, except for the strongest ones that could resist all of the cleaning supplies that they would use, like bleach. So this 1% is the only one that survives, and then they start replicating with each other. Now that you have just as many viral or organic compounds sitting around your hospital, but now they're supercharged because they all just came from that super 1% that couldn't die and you couldn't kill it. And so now it's basically just evolved into this unkillable virus. And then you got MRSA. That's where MRSA comes from, for people who didn't know. We actually created MRSA accidentally by trying to be too clean, and we killed off the weak stuff, and the heavy hitter stuff survived and replicated, and now we've got MRSA, which is damn hard to kill. So would a zombie be the same way? Would that virus continue to mutate to the point where even if you found ways to kill them, they would just evolve and mutate, and after some time, whatever it is that you discovered to kill them wouldn't work anymore? Maybe you found a compound or a chemical, a biological or a chemical solution that could kill them. Yeah, you might kill off a big chunk of them, but then they're going to start evolving to become immune to that. Now you got to figure out another way to kill them. Eventually, they're going to evolve to the point where you're not going to have any fucking clue how to kill them. And by that time, the vast majority, probably 99.9% of the population is already going to be infected anyway. So it gets to the point where you just have to survive. You're not going to kill off the virus. Nothing is ever going to go back to normal. It's not going to be. You got to think about, do they have any enhancements? I mean, we already talked about how can they run? Can they climb? Can they communicate? But what if they have other enhancements? What if they have night vision, like cats? What if they have incredible hearing, like cats and dogs? Or incredible smell, like dogs? Think about all the senses that we have that suck compared to even just dogs and cats. They excel in everything compared to humans except for intelligence. But intelligence isn't going to kill a zombie. What you might come up with intelligence might kill a zombie, but if that zombie's got super smelling, super hearing, super sight, super taste, can they, do they have very sensitive, skin? Is their dermis going to be very sensitive to vibrations to where they could feel a footstep? You might be fucked. I mean, think about A Quiet Place. Those aren't even zombies, but the fact that if you even make any noise, you're pretty much dead. Now imagine if that applies to 390 million zombies in the US, and you make a noise. You sneeze. Even if you tried to cover up your sneeze and you just went, one of them's gonna hear you, and all of a sudden you've got a horde on your ass and you're dead. And you can't stop that. You can't stop a sneeze. What if you got hay fever? What if you catch a cold and you got a cough? What if your pants are baggy and your thighs are too thick and your pants rub together and they make that little swishy sound? What if your shoes squeak? I don't know if it's just me, but like, I swear 9 out of 10 pairs of shoes I buy, they squeak when you walk. Even if you're walking on like grass or something soft, like they'll squeak. There's something in the soles or the tongues or something that just, they squeak every time you walk and you'd be fucked. What if, I mean, so I've already kind of gone over like, the big stuff. So I'm kind of trying to like remember other things here. Oh, I mean, what will it infect? Is it only going to infect humans, or is it going to affect any living creature on the planet? So everything: dogs, cats, mice, rabbits, birds, deer, moose. I mean, could you imagine living in a city? Like, I'm living in Salt Lake. We have a big ass zoo here. Imagine if it spread to the zoo and you started getting zombie polar bears and zombie tigers and lions and camels. And then they all break out. I don't know about you, but I don't want to sit there and survive for like 10 years in a zombie apocalypse just to get killed by a zombie camel. That would suck. And could you imagine how fast people would get fucked up if you had zombie bears and zombie tigers and lions and leopards and panthers? Things that can like already move fast as fuck. Could you imagine a zombie cheetah running at you at like 70 miles an hour? Probably faster because it's a fucking zombie cheetah. I feel like you'd lose a vast majority of your population just from infected animals. Because pretty much every animal on the planet that is like cat-sized or above is faster than your average human. Humans are just, we suck at everything. I mean, we have like nothing but our brains. If we didn't have our intelligence, we would be easily at the bottom of the totem pole. Like, we sit here and think we're apex predators and stuff. Yeah, technically we are because we use our brains. If we didn't have our brains, we'd be bottom of the food chain easily. We don't have shit. Our teeth suck. We don't have claws. I mean, besides this, we don't have fur. We don't have great smelling or sight or hearing, any of that shit. We're slow compared to most other animals. We're not very strong. Like, our bite or our grip, it's not very strong. I mean, compare your grip to a zombie gorilla. Zombie gorilla could probably crush your skull, and you'd just be sitting there like giving him a rug burn. Here in Utah, you've got deer, fast as fuck. You've got moose, beastie as fuck. Imagine if you had a moose or a bear coming at you in your little safe haven. Say goodbye to your barricades. Those things aren't going to hold up against those things. If they're going rampaging, they're going to run right through your barricades. And they're probably going to be bullet sponges. They're not going to want to go down. You're going to waste a shit ton of ammunition just trying to stop one, let alone if you get a lot of them. And that's not including the fact that you also have mountain lions here in Utah. And wolves are starting to work their way into Utah. And coyotes. All these things that could get around all your perimeters easily if they were zombified. Birds. We have shit tons of different types of birds here. Could you imagine being killed by a zombie goose? Sorry, I had to stop and think about that. That was ridiculous. but it would probably happen. Somebody out there would get killed by a zombie goose or a zombie duck. Another question. Do they heal? Do they regenerate? If the virus is mutating, if the virus can replicate, mutate, evolve, that also implies that it could possibly regenerate as well, or at least learn how to. So you might chop off a zombie's head or an arm or a leg or something, but over time they might just regrow it. So if you can't even kill the zombie, and then you got zombies who can actually like regenerate major organs or limbs, you know, like convert mass that they consume into regenerating. It wouldn't be that implausible. Look at people. We eat protein to regenerate and build muscle. If zombies are eating people and they're getting all that nutrition stuff and the virus puts it where it needs to go, they could technically heal and get stronger and bigger and regenerate. That's kind of scary. How's their intelligence? We kind of brushed on this earlier, but will they get smarter over time? Will the average starter zombie be slow and stupid, but then over time, they're going to start getting faster and smarter, and then before you know it, you got zombies who know how to use tools and weapons or tactics or communication skills. Now you're really fucked. Because now they're kind of on the same level as a human. If they can sit there and think and communicate and make things, you're fucked. Because not only are you vastly outnumbered, like 1,000,000 to 1, but if they're all thinking on the same level as you are, it doesn't matter what you do, they're going to find a way around it. Those are just the basics. I mean, it's not like I've thought about this at all or anything. You know, it's not like I spent time thinking about what I would do in a zombie apocalypse and what variables might come into play. But those are just the basics. Okay, we're not talking about advanced variables. We are not talking about confounding variables, which for those of you, confounding variable is kind of like an invisible variable. It's something that you don't realize is there until it's spotted. A good example of a confounding variable is if a study says more people drown in the summer because they consume ice cream in the summer. So therefore, ice cream causes an increase in your risk of drowning. You know, cause and effect. That might seem plausible if you're like, oh yeah, people are eating ice cream, and the more that people eat ice cream, the more they drown. The more people that seem to drown in a year. But the confounding variable is whether more people eat ice cream in the summer and more people go swimming in the summer. So therefore, it seems like ice cream is increasing your risk of drowning when in fact it has nothing to do with each other. There is no correlation between the two. It is weather that is causing both numbers to rise simultaneously. They have nothing to do with each other. So there's going to be a shit ton of stuff with zombies that you're going to think you got them figured out, and you don't, because it's not anything. There's some variable in there that you didn't think of that's hidden. And then before you figure out what it is, it's probably too late anyway. So there's my rant. And even though it took almost an hour to rant this out, this is like the top 1% of the surface of all the questions and possibilities of a zombie apocalypse. If I had a podcast going, I would probably have to dedicate like 10 to 20 hours to discuss everything that there could possibly be about a zombie apocalypse. From how it could start, how it could be transmitted, who's the first to go, what kind of zombies are you dealing with, what kind of tactics would you have to use depending on what zombie you're dealing with. Will these zombies change, so you have to change your tactics? Will these zombies just come from infection rates like bites, so you don't have to worry about it being in the air? Or is this going to be like a traditional virus that's going to be a droplet that's going to get in the air and infect you? You know, you think like Walking Dead, how everybody is infected because it was in the air. And it just finally triggers when somebody dies. Or gets, bit and then it kills them and then they reanimate. Or is it just going to turn everybody? Do you even have to die to turn into one? Is it going to be like the rage virus from 28 Days Later, where all you have to do is basically get it, touch it, any open wound or drop in your mouth or your eyes or something, and within like a couple minutes you'll turn. You don't even have to die, you just turn into one. Now we talked about the variables of how long will they last? Will they last indefinitely, or will they disappear over time when they just finally run out of resources and they decay? We don't know. So all these people that sit here and say, no, the military would take care of everything, you're probably going to be the first to go. I'm sorry, because the military ain't going to do shit for this. And if you expect police, firefighters, emergency services of any kind to help, no, sorry, they're probably gone too. And if you can go to the hospital, no, they're probably gone too. And then depending on what you're dealing with, some places would be the perfect choice to hide out, other place, or if the variable changes, that might be the worst place to hide out. You would think, oh, let's go just barricade up like a Walmart and we can live in there. There's tons of non-perishable food in there. You could barricade it off. You'd have a lot of space. You'd have like all the survival gear. You'd have all the toiletries. You'd have all the food. You'd have all the, bedding, sheets, pillows, all that stuff. Like, you would have everything in a Walmart, and you could just close it off and clear it out. It seems like it'd be the ideal place to be. But what if this stuff is transmitted through the air? And now you've just barricaded yourself in a Walmart with 50 people, and half of them start turning 2 weeks later. Now you're either going to be fucked and you're going to get killed, or you're going to get run out of your safe haven and out on the streets where there's another couple million, sitting outside hanging, waiting for you. Or maybe zombies would be attracted to all sorts of sustenance, not just people. So you barricade yourself in a Walmart, and all of a sudden you've got a million zombies outside Walmart because they want to come in and get the Oreos or the chips and salsa, get that guac. Too many variables. But to anyone who says that, yeah, we could beat a zombie virus, sorry. I feel like I'm Doctor Strange in the fact that I have gone through like millions of countless scenarios. And you might have like one or two that might ensure that humans survive. We're still going to be completely wrecked. We will lose 99.999% of the population. But we might be able to actually stay alive rather than going completely extinct. If all the variables lined up perfectly to where there was some place that humans could go to be safe. But that's unlikely. That probably wouldn't happen. So, zombie apocalypse, I'm sorry. It would probably just come down to trying to survive as long as possible, just for the ego trip. I mean, you could talk and boast to, the couple of people that are left in the world about how long you've stayed alive. But they've obviously stayed alive just as long because you're boasting to them, so you don't really have anything to brag about either. So you can either just try and survive, or you can just go run off and play with some zombies, whatever you want to do. You actually probably have a better chance of surviving a nuclear apocalypse than you do a zombie apocalypse. Because a nuclear apocalypse, at least you could find certain spots that are not completely irradiated and that everything is not completely messed up. Nuclear winter would be a problem, but if you could find something like a bunker that had, heating and food and all that stuff, you might be able to wait out a little bit. But waiting out a nuclear apocalypse would probably take hundreds of years at least before all that radiation started to, die down a little bit. But at least you'd have a chance. You get a lot of people into a bunker who could survive generations, and then maybe someday you could go back to the surface. Or here in Utah, if you're lucky enough to be down in Zion's National Park, where there's a shit ton of caves, really deep caves down there that would not get irradiated. And they're full of clean water. And you could probably find edible moss or fungus or something to eat. Then maybe you'd survive for a little while. Anyways, there you go. 57-minute video on the basic, maybe 10% of a zombie apocalypse. I hope you loved this rant. If you want more of this, hit me up. I will try to give you some more information on how deep this rabbit hole goes on the idea of a zombie apocalypse. This was just tip of the iceberg, and it took me almost an hour to talk about. But how I mentioned at the beginning of this video, how I was going to rant about the concept of intelligence creating or influencing morality, that will be my next video, because I think that is a very interesting subject. This video is kind of out there, it's kind of weird, not like my normal videos talking about concepts, usually psychological concepts. This one was just a random one that I had a friend tell me he wanted me to do because they knew how much I know about this stupid subject and how much I could rant about it. And that is my channel, is ranting about stupid shit. So the next one will be about intelligence and morality. Is morality an actual universal concept, or is it just only accompanied by people who have higher level thinking? I shouldn't say people, I should say animals with higher level critical thinking skills, who have that frontal lobe and that cerebral cortex to understand beyond just survival and hardwiring and genetics. So we will talk about that next time. I hope you all enjoyed this rather ridiculous topic that took an hour. If you're watching this video and you made it to this point, I hope to God that you were just listening to this while you were doing something productive, because otherwise you just sat here for an hour and probably wasted an hour of your life that you could have done something better with. But I do appreciate you tuning in. And I do appreciate those of you who follow, even if my videos are completely useless. They're still fun to watch, aren't they? At least to a degree. You gotta admit it. The belligerence and the stupidity of these videos has a certain charm to it. Not to mention, the beard and the hat. It's a package deal. Anyways, have a wonderful day or evening whenever you're watching this. I hope you have a great day, a great week, a great month, a great year, a great life. See you next time. And in the meantime, be good. All of you. Damn it. Be good to each other. All right?